Our next speaker grew up in a town reminiscent of New Hampshire's declining mill towns with struggling schools. That's familiar to me. I grew up in Bethlehem. His father was a trade union member who worked as a mechanic and as a maintenance man. His mother was a homemaker. That also sounds familiar to me. He earned a scholarship to college, worked as a carpenter and in a factory. He's the only one in his family to attend and graduate from college. That also sounds familiar to me. He was the lead lawyer in the 1997 Claremont school funding case that ruled every child deserves a strong and competitive state-funded public education. The failure of both political parties to address our broken property tax and school funding system is why he is running for governor. He's putting our children and taxpayers first by proposing his own pledge to lower property taxes and finally fairly fund our schools. He's putting our planet first by opposing the fracked gas Granite Bridge pipeline. And he is the only candidate putting our democracy first by refusing all corporate PAC and LLC special interest money. He served on the Executive Council since 2016. Please welcome Andy Valinsky.
Gracefully over the chain. It's a good start. Hey, thank you. Thank you for everyone coming out. Thank you for New Hampshire Unites for putting on this event. Let's hear it again for Samantha, who is powerful. I am Andrew Valinsky. I'm on the Executive Council and I'm running for governor. We're in the midst of a COVID crisis, an economic crisis, an existential climate change crisis, and the long-standing crisis of racial injustice is roiling to the surface. This is a time when we need to support and build up our young leaders, like those of the Sunrise Movement, those of the New Hampshire Youth Movement, and those of the Black Lives Movement. We are blind. We are blind if we think New Hampshire is not guilty of overt and systemic racism. In 1991, the KKK held a rally in New Hampshire, in Rochester. It's already been mentioned that a young boy in Claremont was almost lynched in 2017. 6 weeks ago, a black man was stopped in Albany for the crime of not having an inspection sticker on his vehicle. 2 police officers busted out his window, tased him, and pulled him out of his car by the hair. That is overt racism, and it is here in New Hampshire. Professor Megan Francis tells us that systemic racism is the equation that black equals dangerous, black equals criminal. And when we cross the street to avoid a black person, that is systemic racism. When we forget that the Constitution presumes everyone innocent, that is systemic racism. A week ago, the Black Lives Matter movement issued 7 demands that I wholeheartedly endorsed. And I think we need to go further. I think of it in 4 areas. First, with respect to the police, we need to demilitarize and diversify the police. We need to train, beginning at recruit school, on implicit bias. I've gone through implicit bias training. We need to do more of that at every level. We need to recruit police officers from more diverse communities outside of New Hampshire and bring them here. We need to ask the question, who we arrest, who we jail, how we punish and how we return people to their home communities. We need to reject the idea that black and brown people are disproportionately arrested and jailed in New Hampshire. We need to do that. On healthcare. Healthcare is a basic human right. It is unacceptable that black and brown people suffer from COVID-19 disproportionately. I've spent a number of years on the board for the Manchester Community Health Center. One of those board requirements is that our clients had to serve on the board. And I learned every board meeting something new, something important from the new Americans who I sat with. That should be the model we follow at community health centers that we invest in and expand all across New Hampshire. And while we're at it, every Granite-Stater, white, black, brown, deserves paid family leave. We need to get that done. You've heard my interest in education. I understand the importance of educational opportunity, and I know the impact of poor funding. And it is particularly impactful on communities of diversity. Manchester's student population is 43% diverse. Manchester spends thousands of dollars less per pupil than any other community in New Hampshire. We need to change that. But look, money is not the sole answer. The curriculum needs to include ethnic, cultural, and racially diverse courses that do not presently exist. And we cannot teach about systemic racism if everyone standing in front of the room is white. We need to recruit a more diverse teacher corps. The final area that I think of systemic racism is in terms of income inequality. The 1% do have an advantage, and we need to combat that. One way we combat that is by adopting a livable minimum wage, which should be at least $15. It's not $10, it's not $12, it's not the embarrassing $7.25. And the phrase equal pay for equal work needs to finally mean something in New Hampshire. So look, I'm a leader who needs to grow. I'm a leader who needs to learn. Coming to places like this, at times like this, is how I do that. I want to become a trusted ally who views leadership through the lens of anti-racism. That's my goal. Let me end with this. When we opened our campaign office, which was before COVID-19, I wrote a phrase on the board that has stayed there throughout this whole process. It's from Scripture. I'm not a particularly religious person, but it's the goal to which I aspire. I don't always get there, but it's Micah 6:8. Act justly, love mercy, walk humbly. That's my goal. I hope you'll join us in pursuing that goal. If you want to learn more about our campaign, the primary is September 8th. Go to VolinskyNH.com. Thank you so much.